Hello and welcome to episode number 34 of the Marriage Coach Podcast, where we are here to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving.
Today on the Marriage Coach Podcast, we're going to be discussing from the marriage vows for richer or for poor, in sickness and in health.
So, babe, we were talking, and as we've been working through the vows for the last 2 episodes and talking more and more about them, and we just keep for each episode going in depth of what we think about the marriage vows and what these marriage vows really mean, because we discussed, previously that a lot of people don't necessarily pay attention to the vows. We were actually shared with someone recently that I don't even remember necessarily what vows were said at our wedding. But just thinking about the fact that we will make a lifetime commitment to someone, a solemn promise to someone, and not even realize what we're saying.
Right.
So thinking about the lessons that we have for today, for richer or for poor, in sickness and in health. Last week, we talked about the vows that we were talking about were loaded. These right here, I would say, are heavy because you have to understand the weight that they carry when you say this. When you say for richer or for poor, in sickness and in health, when you're making a commitment to this nature on your wedding day, on the day that you marry the person that you love and want to spend the rest of your life with, you have to have a heart, a mind to understand what it is that you are committing to.
I mean, these vows are, I remember, if I can think about, if we purchase vehicles and even when we purchase our home, I remember all this paperwork you get. We get all this paperwork. And after you get so exhausted and then you just tired of doing paperwork. But the danger in that is with the mortgage company, you find out that you actually signed something in the fine print that you didn't even know you agreed upon.
Wow.
That's why, this whole thing of, the month of March, we want to basically make awareness of some of the things that we committed ourselves to. And if you think about that day when you actually got married, walked down the aisle, it was so many things going on in your head. And the last thing you probably was thinking about is what you repeated from what the minister, the priest, your pastor, judge, or wherever you got married at, asked a few couples. And come to find out, a lot of couples do not even remember what the vows were. So, we want to basically, the month of March, we just want to bring up awareness of the vows and how important it is, whether you're married, whether you're single, getting ready to get married, really understanding, what these vows mean and what we are committing ourselves to. And I think the vows is really good for even situation like, for example, on the job, in the corporate world, or if you have a business, the best thing to do, for your employees is to do a performance review. And I think the vows is really good for even the performance review, really, going down and breaking these vows down, each point of the vows, for sickness and the health, for richer or for poor.
For richer or for poor. Talking about that vow first, I remember when we got married, we didn't have much of anything. I would not say we didn't have anything because we had each other. But when it came to material things, we did not have much of anything. we didn't have a car.
We didn't have a house. We didn't have
we didn't have. But I just began to think about all the things that we went through, and I feel like we've lived out the for richer and for poor. We've lived out the fact that we've been in a place where we didn't have anything. We didn't have anything to call our own, but over time, things were built together. Over time, we learned things together. Over time, we grew and we had things together. So now when we live in what I call the richness of life, you can be rich in life. You can be rich in love. You can be rich in your relationship, that you may not have all the material things that other people have. But if you have a great relationship, then you are living the richer. And I think about this being a multifaceted thing, because most people would say for richer or for poor, I can say one point: if you have money, you don't have money. And we talked about that before, because we agree that if we were in a cardboard box, as long as we're together, we can work our way out of that box together and get back to where we are and where we want to go. Even the things that we want to have in the future, whatever the things that we want to leave for the children and the family and things of that nature, we can work those things together. So we have committed to that for the richer or the poor, but at the same time committing to a richer relationship, not just more money in the bank, but a richer relationship, a richer communication, a richer togetherness. Being richer as a couple, to me, is living your best life, and that has nothing to do with the stuff that you possess, but with the kind of relationship you have. That's living your best life as far as the richer. And I'm talking about you and your spouse being happy, you and your spouse. Not saying that there's never going to be a problem. We're humans. We're two different people. There's going to be times we disagree. We're not going to be on the same page, but we live a rich relationship when we can talk about those things. We can agree to disagree, or we can see the other person's point of view and say, you know what, you're right, I was wrong about that, or no, you were right, I was wrong about that. Whatever it is, to me, that's one of the things, living a richer relationship.
Right. Some people are so poor, all they have is money. And we have to really be thinking it's not about the money, but it's about richness, And I remember even, and what I do love about even, talking about our relationship in the beginning, I mean, physically, we didn't have anything. So it wasn't anything physically. I mean, there was no prenup. I mean, there was no, because we didn't have anything to prenup. I mean, we didn't have anything. I mean, even when we started and we came together and I went to the military, I mean, we had a joint bank account. We everything's from the beginning with us been joint. We got married in the beginning. I mean, that's couples that's already established, and somebody else. I mean, somebody had a business and they already have their own money, and they married somebody else that also have their own money, and now you have this thing with two becoming one, but the banks are still separated. I mean, that's a whole nother situation now that we won't even be able to deal with on today, maybe on another podcast. Or even asking the question, what do rich or for poor look like for you? What do it look like for you? I mean, what do richer look like for you? What do poor look like for you?
Yeah, because when I think about it, babe, even though, not us not having our own house, we didn't have our own car. I was living with someone, you were in basic training, then you were in AIT. For someone, I mean, that could be, in the physical sense, that can be categorized as poor, even when we first moved to Kentucky. But to me, I still thought we were good, because it was more of the relationship that we had with each other.
And that was the thing to think about it. So in all essence, I mean, you going back and looking at it now,
that's when you realize
we are financially. I mean, but we were richer then.
Yes,
we didn't have anything. We were still rich. I mean, because we were okay.
Yes,
we were okay with not having anything. We were okay with not having
sleeping
the
on an air mattress.
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we started off when we first got married. We were sleeping on the air mattress.
Yes.
Sleep on the air mattress for weeks before we even purchased the bed. When I say we didn't have anything, we didn't have nothing. I went to the military. They provide housing, but I'm telling you, we in the beginning we didn't have anything to put in the house. We had to start from scratch. We had to build from nothing.
Yes,
either one of us. The only thing we had, you had a closet full of shoes. That's a whole other situation right there. We can't even do a podcast on that one. The thing about it is, we literally didn't have anything. But the thing about it, really thinking about then and now, I'm like, man, we were rich. I mean, never complained. I wasn't mad. We never even called it poor. We never even called it if we didn't have anything. We really looked at it. So obviously what richer for us was totally different what richer may be for you. First thing, write this down, decide and identify what richer or poor is for you. What do it mean to you?
I definitely agree. I definitely agree, because sitting here right now talking it out is when I thought about it. I'm like, in the natural sense, and as far as stuff, material stuff, we would say, oh, we didn't have anything, because we didn't. But then I was like, but I didn't feel I didn't feel any different then than I do now, because I love you and we were together and it was exciting. We were starting off, we were
Yeah.
building this life together. And then if I look back, I mean, you were talking, and while you were talking, my mind just went through a zoom flash of our last 22, almost 23 years
Yeah.
together. And I just thought about from level to level where we've gone, and from level to level what has changed for us.
Mm.
And all that is a part of our richer and poorer
Yeah.
process.
Mm.
And that's all a part of us. It encompasses everything, because for us, we're more talking about on the emotional, mental, spiritual standpoint, but as well as
Yeah.
finances. Financial things changed for us over the years,
Absolutely.
and we are in a different place than we were ever before. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, but I still feel the same. I still feel like I want to do life with this man. I still feel like no matter what we have or don't have. And that's what I think about the rich or poor. It's so much, so many levels to this thing. And that's why I said it's weighted. And when you say this, you want to know what it is you are committing to.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, no matter what it is, I'm sticking around, and we're gonna work on having the richer.
Yeah.
We're gonna be okay, and we're gonna work together through the poor, but we're gonna work towards the richer, and that's richer relationships,
Yeah.
richer understanding for one another, richer love, richer communication, as well as your finances,
Absolutely.
because it encompasses all of that. But you do that together, and this is basically this line says, I'm in it. I'm
Mm.
in it. I'm all the way in.
Yeah.
There, you don't have to worry about me. I'm not going to run at the first sight of something you don't have or something you can't give. I'm all in. And we'll work at it together so that you can give, so that we can have.
Yeah. And I mean, you really think about this statement. I mean, that's it, to sum it all up. That's what it's really about. How committed are you?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
committed are you in the process?
Mm-hmm.
Will you still love me
Yeah.
if we have it?
Come
Or
on.
will you still love me if
If
we
we
don't?
don't.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I mean, how committed are
Yeah.
you? And it's great to decide that in the beginning.
Yeah.
But even if you're married right now, come on. I mean, like I said, we can rate. Be very careful. Be very
Yes.
careful.
Yes,
I don't
please.
want anyone to rate and
Whew.
then end up in divorce, because the whole point of this Marriage Coach podcast is
It's to
taking
help us.
relationships
Yes. From
from
surviving
surviving
to
to
thriving.
thriving. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so we about thriving relationships. So really be careful. I really understand. I mean, if you're already on a rocky situation, maybe you want to deal with some other things now,
Yeah.
get some counseling, and not trying to counsel yourself. I mean, so I want to put a disclaimer right there for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you already having a record relationship, if you haven't been counseled or you haven't been
Yeah.
through
Don't start
coaching
rating right
in your
now.
marriage, no, please don't rate, because that can make things worse
Mm-hmm.
instead of making things better. Maybe it's not the time for you to rate. But if you're past that, if you're trying to move forward, if you're trying to grow, if you're trying to develop, if you're trying to go from point A to point B
Mm-hmm.
and say, you know what, this is why marriage is right now. I'm ready to take my marriage to the next level. By all means, rate right now, and go ahead and find out where you are. Then find out what we need to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this is the thing. So the first thing I want you to do is I identify.
Identify.
Identify. You must first identify, what do richer for poor mean to you. So the first thing you want to do is identify. Next thing you want to do is evaluate.
So you're rating yourself. So you're evaluating your situation. We're evaluating in our marriage. How are we doing with richer or poor? What are we working on? What now we want to rate it? Where am I at with it? What are we doing with it? How well are we with this?
Yeah. And another thing you want to do, you want to review.
Mm-hmm.
You want to review this constantly. I mean, I don't know. I mean, for someone may want to do a review it once a year. Somebody else maybe once a month, maybe every quarter,
Mm-hmm.
would be actually better. So I would say once a year. Once a year is great.
Mm-hmm.
Once a year reevaluating. We actually do this.
Yep.
Not this particular evaluation, but I mean, we really take
A whole.
take back, look at our relationship over the past year and seeing how do we move forward, some things we need to work on. One of the questions I asked her around the anniversary time, is there anything I can do to be a better husband, a better spouse to you, what would it be?
Mm.
Moving into the next year, because my goal is for our marriage to be better than it ever has been, and not even being on the same level, but I want it to be better. I want it to be better than it was the previous year. So
So
that's one of
true.
the
That's
things we
what we
do.
work on.
And I
Mhm.
definitely recommend that to the marriage coach family, to also do this. I want you to really begin to go through the process of reviewing the vows, reviewing, what's going on in your relationship. What do you want? What do you expect? What do you want out of this marriage? What do you want? And I think the best thing, instead of what do you want, taking the what do you want out to what can you contribute.
Yes, yes.
I
What can
think that's
I,
better.
instead of what do I want, what can I give? Because that's the way I see the question that you asked me.
Mm,
Because the question that you asked me then puts me in the mindset like, if he's willing to do something
mm,
to be a better husband to me, then I have to be willing to do something to be a better wife to him.
yeah,
What is it that I need? So when you looking at it, you looking at it from a standpoint of what can I contribute, not from a standpoint of what can they give to me,
yeah,
what can they do better for me? No, what can I contribute to the relationship for it to be richer?
yeah,
What can I contribute to the marriage for us to be better? What can I contribute to our communication so that we are on the same page or so that we understand each other better? What can I do? So it's from a personal standpoint.
right. Yeah. So we're talking about that. So another thing you want to deal with in the marriage vows today, and
Mm-hmm.
that is in sickness and in health. And what I
Absolutely.
do, I recommend you refer back to episode 25. I mean, we went more in detail in episode 25. We're just going to kind of, just really touch on it. But go back to episode 25, and I want you to look at episode 25, and it gets more in detail of sickness and in health. And basically, I mean, episode 25 came out of the fact I contracted COVID-19 in the beginning of 2020, actually, the end of
The end of
2020,
December.
beginning of 2021.
Mhm. Right. So we did the episode on in sickness and in health because we were in the gulf of it.
Yeah.
And it gave us the opportunity to freshly share some of the things that you experienced.
Things
But
that we were feeling.
exactly. The things that you go through, the
Yeah.
adjustments that have to be made in your life. And listen, we don't take this lightly. We understand that, he tested positive for COVID at the end of December.
Yeah.
And we even talked about it in that podcast that we know that there are people that are facing life threatening illnesses. There are illness in any spouse or child brings about a change for the entire family, the
Yeah.
entire household. It brings a lot of things. It brings financial, sometimes it brings financial strain. Someone may be sick and cannot work.
Mm,
So in sickness and in health, we talked about before, it's just I'm with you.
yeah.
No matter what, I'm here to care for you. I'm here to
Yeah.
take care of you. I'm not going to run.
Yeah.
If when the doctor gives the report, I'm not going to run. I can't do this. I can't handle that. And we know that there's a lot of different things because not only could it be COVID-19 or could it be cancer or something else, it could be mental illness that your
Mm,
spouse or your significant other suffers from.
yeah.
It could be some type of depression or something like that. People have a lot of different things that we don't necessarily call sicknesses, but they are
Yeah.
because they change you in some type of way. And when a couple has to deal with these things, when a family has to deal with these things, life changes for you.
Yeah.
And what this vow says is that even if we have to face something as that, I'm still here. I'm still on your side. If you're battling with mental health, we're going to get you the help that you need, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be by your side as you work through that. If you're battling depression, I'm going to be by your side
Yeah.
as you work through that. If you're experiencing COVID-19, I mean, physically I couldn't take care of him, but
Yeah.
I was making sure that he had
You
everything that
did
he
your
needed.
best. You did your best.
Exactly, do my part.
Yeah, you did your best, and one of the things, I mean, even just talking about our experience, and like I say, episode 25, but just a little a small snap of it. COVID-19 for 2 weeks. 2 weeks we're separated, sleeping in different rooms.
Mhm.
But then prior to that, I had an issue about 3-4 years ago. I was diagnosed with thyroid disease,
Mhm.
and my heart rate was all out of whack, and I was taking heart medication, and the heart medication, I mean, really, it affected my manhood. I mean, I'm telling you, and this went on for about, man, maybe about 8 months before they adjusted the medication or whatever. So the COVID-19, I mean, as far as when you relating to something like sex, I mean, COVID-19, I mean, it was only 2 weeks, 2 weeks and it was
Mm-hmm.
over with. I mean, but this other
Some months.
situation, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this lasted a while. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this lasted 6, 8 months. I mean, it even could have been a year. It was really, it was a, and, and then even dealing with that, you're talking about mental health. I mean, this affected me mentally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, although you was like, "Oh, baby, it's okay, it's okay." Nah, it's something, and I didn't realize this
So we were
till
talking
that
about it.
situation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, to the situation, I really realized, like, man, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what you
What you
say.
say? Mm-hmm.
I mean, so sickness and in health. I mean, I was sick in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I couldn't even think right. I didn't. I felt low of myself. I mean, I didn't even. It's like your manhood ain't working. I mean, I didn't even realize how it affected me as a man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really took me to a place where it was like, man, and you was like, oh, baby, it's okay, but I didn't feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like, and I had to hold that secretly, holding this in my
Mm-hmm.
mind, the way I felt about myself. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't produce, and so I mean, just those type of things. I mean, really, and I talk a little bit more about it in episode 25.
25.
But
Mm-hmm.
just really, thinking about those things. I mean, things happen, and it affects, like Sean said, it affects you physically, but it also affects you mentally.
Mm-hmm.
The person is actually going through. I mean, maybe someone was diagnosed with cancer, and you're tired, and
Mm-hmm.
now here's the struggle with. I mean, which we're talking, with the subject of sex. I mean, here you are, and so, I mean, you have one person. I mean, it's like, man, I really don't feel like it. So now you're in a position where it's like, man, I don't feel like it, but I feel obligated to. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, just really have to push through that. I mean, this stuff is serious,
Mm-hmm.
when we're talking about sickness in the health. So, really, really, really think about this. I mean, even in our marriage, it's like, man, what do sickness and in health look like? And I really believe, really taking these vows, and really, even if you don't, even if you decide no, you're not going to rate it right now or whatever till you get things together. I really, I really advise you, highly recommend that you take these vows and you really look at the vows and you really say, you know what? What do this mean to us? What if this happened? What are we
Mm-hmm.
gonna do?
Yeah.
Really pre-plan, because the truth of the matter is life happens and you never know what's gonna happen. I don't care how healthy you are, you never know what's
Absolutely.
gonna happen. You can go to work, someone can be in a
An
car
accident.
accident,
Mm-hmm.
paralyzed for the rest of their life. What do that look like?
Yes.
How are we
Yes.
gonna make it through this situation?
Mm-hmm.
How are we gonna make it through this? Well, how is this gonna affect me mentally? I mean, if I'm paralyzed from the waist down, what is that gonna do for our marriage? I mean, so really, now another thing, it goes back to commitment. I mean, this is all about
Yeah,
committed.
that's what it is.
How committed? Matter of
Right.
fact, the marriage vows really is all about how committed you are in here. Are
Yeah.
you committed with me while we're healthy, and are you committed with me while we're sick? How far
Will
would
you
you
go with
go
me?
with
Mm-hmm.
me? I mean, that's the thing.
Exactly.
So if you can prepare for it right now, even if it never happened, oh man, God be the glory. It's such an awesome thing. If you never have to deal with sickness, if you never have to deal with rich or for poor, if you never have to deal with these things, man, all power to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really good to put yourself in that situation before it happened. It's like going on vacation. Who go on vacation and don't prepare for the trip? Who don't look at the weather to see, okay, what kind of clothes we need to wear? What
Mm-hmm.
type of outfits we need to wear? Do we need to wear a jacket, or do we need to wear a heavy coat, or can we wear shorts? I mean, everyone look at the weather before you go on the trip. So it's the same thing even in our marriage. Before it happened, plan for it. A pre-plan for it. Like, man, how do I plan for the forecast just in case something happened?
And I think it's important to understand it, because even when, like I said, when we got married, I don't even remember. I mean, I know we did traditional wedding vows, traditional Christian wedding vows, but I didn't remember what I actually said or committed to. But I do know that I committed to do this life with him. I do know that I committed to be by his side. I've heard I mean, you've heard the vows in movies before. I've heard them in movies before. I've heard people say at other weddings, in sickness and in health, forsaking all others. And I've heard this before. So when we have to live that out, because jumping back to when you were talking, you talked about it in a little bit in 25, but when you were talking, you experienced the thyroid thing that came on you all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You just all of a sudden, I mean, we were getting ready for a church picnic. We're getting ready. Everybody's at the church. We're getting ready to head to the park. And all of a sudden, you're sweating profusely and your heart rate is out of control.
Mm.
And for me, I remember telling you later that that day it really set into my mind when I came home from the hospital to get your clothes and get your stuff and come back. I was thinking like, man, my husband could have died today.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have been a widow today because we were getting ready to go on a picnic with his heart rate racing. And, you know, if we'd have been out there in the hot sun with his heart rate racing like this,
Yeah.
he could have died
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And a sadness came over me when I came home and I'm putting your stuff in the bag because I'm like, wow, this could have been like I'm in this room by myself forever. And so
Mm.
that's what, to me, the in sickness and in health has that type of weight to it because I've committed and I am committed to ride this out, stand beside your side
Yeah.
all the way until the end, which means until the point when you or I are not here anymore.
Yeah.
And that day was like, oh, the not here anymore could have been today.
Yeah.
So my thing is, I think that is very important. I don't think that we should take marriage lightly. We should not take our vows lightly. And just thinking about this, I admonish someone today. I encourage you, I challenge you to think about this. Think about what you have committed to. Think about what in life you may have to experience. And no, we can't, you can think about these things and get yourself mentally to understand them. And you can't really fathom them until they happen. But the question is, you know, we can talk about a lot of things while we're attracted to a person or want to be with a person, but when it comes down to something like this, you have to be committed beyond that. You know, you have to be committed beyond the sex. You have to be committed beyond the physical attraction. You have to be committed beyond what they can give me, what they can buy me, what we have together. When you're talking about in sickness and in health, I don't care how much money you have in a bank account. If your significant other is sick, that money is not going to mean anything. I mean, yeah, you can pay for the copays, you can pay for the medicine, but you still are going to have a stress in your life that money can't fix. You're still going to have to do some things that money, it may be able to help you with, because you can help, you know, pay for some help for someone to come help you take care of them. But that's not, when you love a person, them being sick, their money is not going to be your main focus. Your main focus is going to be them and them getting well. And I'm telling you, it's nothing like experiencing that. I mean, we experienced so much when he had the thyroid thing, even leaving a funeral, and all of a sudden he's got these cold chills and he's on the sofa and he's shaking like a leaf. And I'm like, what is going on? All the time. So that span of him dealing with the thyroid issue, it was always a concern about him, you know, always a thing about him. Even when he wanted to, when you were ready to start going back cycling again, I'm like, oh no. The first time you were like, I'm going to go ahead and cut the grass and trim the trees. I'm like, what? What? Even when you were preaching at church, it was a fear like, oh my God, this man preaching hard. He holding on to the pulpit and preaching. I don't want, you know, all of these things. So it puts sickness, puts you in a place that you can think about it and you can think about what could happen, but I'm not 100% sure that you can prepare for what it really feels like to be enduring it.
Right. I mean, just think about this. I mean, briefly, um, it was a situation when I had the heart procedure.
Mhm.
I was on the operating table
Yes,
for eight
alone.
hours. 8 hours on the operating table. What was the experience of that like?
It was stressful. It was stressful because I didn't think you were gonna be in there that long, and I'm just waiting and waiting. I'm like, did something go wrong? You know what happened? You know, they haven't came out to say anything. There's no update on the screen. Your name is up there, but there's no update. And you know, I really, when I was sitting in the waiting room, I did a lot of things to stay busy so that my mind, because I know me, my mind could go to the left and be like, oh Lord, my husband had died. They just ain't came out and told me. So, I had to do things on my iPad, emailing, texting, and all that to try to stay busy. But I did keep looking up like, wait, they ain't said nothing. They haven't said nothing. Like, what's going on? What happens? And, I remember you telling me all these things. Like, if something happens to me, I'm like, oh my God. And that's a feeling that I can't even like I don't even know if I could put it into words. It's just like something sinks in your stomach, like your heart just drops because this person that you love could possibly not be here. And to think about that, it's like, I mean, it's stress. So I can only think about in a marriage that you have everyday life for a person that's dealing with this illness. We were dealing with the thyroid thing. You had everyday life. You still got kids, still got to go to school. Bills still got to get paid. The house still needs to be clean. The person needs to go to appointments. Co-pays need to be paid. It's a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of wheels moving at the same time. But then the emotional part of it is that sometimes you have to spush that down until you get a moment to say, ooh, wow, this really could have took him out, or wow, we're going to get through this. Whatever it is, you only have limited time to do that because you're in the gulf of dealing with the sickness. So when you say this is about commitment, it really is. It's about how committed you are going to be to that other person.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is actually the first time I asked you this question. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of interesting getting your
Yeah.
perspective on that.
And it just took my mind back there just for you asking me that.
Family, so on next week, we have a great episode, singles episode. Not only are we gonna have Jamila on, but we're gonna have two young brothers, single young men, talking the perspective of being single from a man's perspective. So we're definitely excited about that. Looking forward to that.
We want to thank you for joining us today on the Marriage Coach Podcast. If you found this information helpful, we want to encourage you to subscribe. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so you will be notified when we upload a video every week. If you're listening on iTunes, rate the podcast and leave a review. That helps us get the word out. And we want to invite you to head on over to our leadership podcast, Lead to Greatness, where my husband is interviewing great entrepreneurs and leaders every week.
So we want to thank you so much for joining us today on the Marriage Coach Podcast. Looking forward to hanging out with you again on next week as we continue to help you take your relationship
from surviving to thriving. Bye. See you next week.